Hey friend, in today's watercolor tutorial, I'm going to be teaching how to paint this sunset landscape of Voyageurs National Park from Minnesota. Without further ado, let's get painting. For today's tutorial, I'm going to be using Prussian Blue, Payne's Gray, Perylene Green, Sap Green, Naple Yellow, Permanent Rose, and Purple. The paper I've taped down here is a size 5 by 7 inches, and I have 3 Princeton round brushes in size 4, 6, and 16. To get started, I want to begin with our water, and with that, I want to actually scratch that. I'm going to get started on our sky. To get started, I'm going to use my size 16 brush just to paint a little bit of a faint line. I'm just going to use a little bit of Prussian Blue as my sketch line. So just halfway, we've got our mark. And then from here, I'm just going to use my brush just to paint a wash of water. It's okay that the faint Prussian Blue kind of bleeds in just a little bit. Okay, and then to get started with applying our color, I'm going to use a little bit of Prussian Blue in the far right corner and just lightly drag it down using a left to right motion. I'm going to do a little bit more. As the paint dries, it does lift in color a little bit, so sometimes it's good just to add a little bit more if needed. And then I'm just going to do a very, very light amount of Payne's Gray, which is super deep, but I just want to overlap a little bit of Payne's Gray starting in that upper right corner, and then just lightly dragging it down. Then from here, I'm going to take my size 16 brush and just do some Naple Yellow, which is a really faint pastel tone yellow. And I'm just going to apply that over in this white area, and then just a little bit more and drag it across here. And then in this in-between area, I'm going to apply a little bit of pink to start. So just in that transition area, that was a lot of pink, but I'm gonna get some water on my brush here and just kind of buff it out. But in the transition between the yellow and the blue, I'm just taking a little bit of pink and kind of dragging it into the blue area, just a bit. And then I'm just going to drag into the yellow a little bit. Okay, love that. And then from here, I'm going to mix up some purple with some Payne's Gray and a little bit of Prussian Blue just to deepen that purple a little bit. And I basically just want to get some deep hints of dark clouds. I actually want to mix a little bit more Payne's Gray just to even deepen it more. But I'm just tapping some irregular brushwork with my brush here just to get the hint of some deep shadowed clouds in this sunset. So these are just really loose. And then from here, I'm going to take just a little bit of pink and apply some more pink just down below this mixture that we did. So just a few touches of the pink, mainly using the tip of the size 16 brush versus the side of it. And then I'm just gonna tap whatever's remaining on my brush just above here a little. Okay, taking my wet brush, taking a clean, slightly damp brush, but again, not too much water, I'm just gonna lift a little bit of the clouds, just a hair bit, to add some more highlights back in. So I'm just taking my size 16 brush and just kind of lifting a little bit of the pigment up slightly, just to reintroduce some highlights in there. I'm gonna smooth out this water line over here. Okay, so from here, and I'm looking at my water line, it is so crooked. That's kind of funny, but not a big deal. That's totally fine. We're gonna have some foliage anyway. So now I just wanna take a little bit of Sap Green, and I'm just going to kind of reiterate our sketch line a little bit. We're gonna have some greenery in here. Okay. So I just did the sketch line just slightly below the water line of the sky. And again, we're gonna have trees covering this area regardless. But to get started on the water below, I'm just going to start with a wash, starting with the bottom using just plain water. And then I'm going to bring that all the way to the top, and it's totally fine that some of that green bleeds down below. Okay, so to begin, I'm going to start with building our reflection, and I'm going to begin with some Prussian Blue. I'm just applying that really loosely towards more of this right area as the heaviest. And then I'm going to take some Payne's Gray and just layer that in the right corner region. And then a hint of some pink, slightly more upward. And then a little bit of purple just below the pink. Just kind of doing a really loose, simple reflection. And then I'm gonna get just a touch more Payne's Gray to layer in this right corner. Okay, so from here, I now want to switch gears to our size 6 brush, and I want to start to build some of our greenery here. And I'm going to start with just a little bit of Sap Green as our first layer. And again, I'm just taking some Sap Green, using the belly of my size 6 brush, just to get some really loose green wash that's gonna softly bleed down into the water. Okay, and then from here, I want to take some Perylene Green, which is a really deep green. It's almost like the Payne's Gray of greens. And with that, I'm just gonna layer this, especially towards this left area. And again, it's super loose. gets a little bit taller towards the left and gradually the height gets a little bit shorter. Okay, now switching gears just a little bit, I'm going to use my size 4 brush, and I'm going to carry on with the Perylene Green. And with that, I actually want to mix in a little bit of Prussian Blue with some Perylene Green. I just want a hint of a cooler tone of green here. So I just simply want to build some of our reflection, and I'm going to actually start over here towards the right because we're going to have some trees that are slightly peeking out. So I'm almost painting these really loose zigzaggy trees here using that blend of the blue mixed with the Perylene Green, just a cooler tone green. So now I've got just a few trees that are kind of reflecting and popping down into the water with their reflection. And it's just really simple and loose and subtle. Just kind of dragging down some of those reflections. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here, but maybe I just have a few bigger, taller trees, so it's going down slightly farther than the ones towards the right. All right, and to help the reflection look a little bit more watery, I'm going to take plain water with my brush and just take my brush and do a few more strokes from left to right to kind of get a ripple effect here. And rinse your brush off as much as you need to get kind of a fade, so that way the ripple colors kind of fade out. So I'm just doing a few kind of left to right brush motions to get those simple kind of ripple effects. So I'm just kind of working my way across. Now I'm just going to take a little bit more Perylene Green and just add a touch more to the base. Just the base of this waterline here, just to add a little bit more depth. Okay, now we can just tap our sky. It's nice and dry. So now we can move on to the foliage that's above this waterline. So what I'm gonna do is actually do what we did before and just start with our Sap Green and just do a really simple base of it. I'm gonna leave just a little bit of a thin white line here that I'm going to fill in later. I just want a little bit of separation here so that way what we've applied below doesn't fully bleed out, because I want this depth of the Perylene Green to just stay. Okay. Now what we're gonna do is just first apply more Sap Green and kind of almost just follow the shadows down below. Here we've got a larger tree, so I'm just gonna add some texture to this kind of rounded cone-like shaped tree. And again, I'm just kind of mimicking the shadows below essentially, and then just tapping my brush to get really loose, rough edges and texture. Okay, so from here, I'm gonna take Perylene Green and just start to build some of our shadows using wet and wet technique, allowing the Perylene Green to kind of bleed into the Sap Green. And then from there, I want to take a little bit of Prussian Blue as well, mixed with a touch of Payne's Gray for like a nice deep blue, just to kind of build even more depth and shadows with our trees. Okay, and before we finish off our trees here, I'm going to take our size 4 brush and just use some Sap Green. And all I want to do is just tap a little bit more finer texture alongside the ridges of the edge of our trees here, just to get a little bit more organic texture so it's not as rounded. So all I'm doing is just loosely tapping along the edges here of our trees. Okay, and then from here, I'm just gonna tap this left corner, and it is dry, and I'm just gonna use some Payne's Gray mixed with just a touch of Perylene Green, using our size 4 brush, and I'm gonna paint some kind of weeds over towards the left here. And I'm just gonna use really light pressure. And I want the weeds to gradually have a thin tip. To achieve that, I start with like more pressure, and then I gradually lift the pressure as I extend, and that's how I get that fine tip at the end. So here I'm just gonna continue to like layer different strokes like this, and some are going to be pointed in different directions. Some are going to be more organic, meaning just kind of like in nature, you'll find different foliage kind of blowing in the breeze in a different direction. So here, I just want to continue to layer and build these little weeds here. Maybe some are slightly folded, so there's part of the tip, but then I'm just going to fold it downward just for some variety here. Some can be maybe quite tall. I'm going to add some that are pointed more towards the left. But you'll notice the base of these weeds are going to be the most dense compared towards the top where there's a little bit more negative space showing. Maybe there's some shorter ones over towards the edge here. I'm gonna do just a few taller ones that kind of pop almost into the greenery. Okay. Now, before I do anything else, I'm just going to take a slightly damp brush and just slide my brush across this white area here. And it still kind of leaves a slight line and division between the water line and the tree line. And before I finish up completely, I like to make sure I have enough shading. So I'm going to get more Perylene Green mixed with Payne's Gray. And I just want to add even more depth at the base of these trees here. And then I'm just going to add a little bit, just slightly below the water line. And then I'm just taking a little bit of water just to buff out that shading slightly. And there we have it. Thank you so much for joining me for today's watercolor tutorial featuring Voyageurs National Park from Minnesota. I hope you enjoyed this one, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any further watercolor tutorials.